Lethal in his prime, Jorge Cadete really burst onto the scene in the UK when he joined Celtic in 1996. Explosive pace and great finishing allowed the Portuguese striker to quickly make a name for himself, and he seemed destined to go further than Scottish football. But things didn't really work out after his time at Parkhead. What went wrong with Jorge Cadete? Born in Mozambique in 1968, Cadete, as his name is actually pronounced, joined the Sporting Lisbon Youth Academy aged just 16 before making his first team debut at 19 years old. He became a regular for Sporting in the 89-90 season, improving his goal scoring tallies each year until he peaked with 26 goals in 38 appearances in the 91-92 campaign, and even finished as the Portuguese League's top goal scorer in the 92-93 season. He would also earn his first cap for the Portuguese national team in 1990, netting his first goal against Malta in 1991. Under the management of former England national team boss Bobby Robson, Cadete was given the captain's armband at Sporting, and was wearing this when they came up against Celtic in a 1993 UEFA Cup tie. Celtic won the first leg 1-0 in Glasgow, but Cadete struck twice in the return game in Portugal to give Sporting a 2-0 win and advance. When Bobby Robson left the club in December of '93, Cadete found himself out of favour under new head coach Carlos Queiroz. He spent much of the 94-95 campaign out on loan at Serie A side Brescia, and a move away from Portugal was now on the cards. In total, he made 203 appearances for Sporting Lisbon, scoring 80 goals. Cadete arrived in Glasgow in February 1996 for an undisclosed nominal fee to complete a move to the then Tommy Burns managed Celtic. Cadete was introduced to the Parkhead crowd with much fanfare at a home game against Partick Thistle, as the supporters hoped a new hero had arrived to help halt Rangers' impending 8th consecutive title triumph. However, it would be a while before anybody would see the Portuguese forward make a Celtic debut. Drawn-out negotiations between Celtic and Sporting Lisbon meant the transfer deadline for registering players was drawing near. There was no January transfer window in these days, but in order for Cadete to play against Rangers in the upcoming Scottish Cup semi-final, he had to have been registered by no later than the 23rd of March. On this date, after finalising things with Sporting, registration papers were submitted by Celtic to the SFA, incorporating a full professional application form and the new player agreement. The chief executive of the SFA at this time was Jim Farry. Whether or not Farry was a Rangers fan has been contested. BBC Radio 1 once described him as such, but this was later denied. However, what is known for certain is that Jim Farry refused to register Cadete in time, which meant he missed the semi-final against Rangers. Walter Smith's side went on to win the game 2-1. Much to the frustration of Celtic fans, a fully fit Cadete had to watch from the stands. At the heart of central defence for Rangers was Richard Gough, the same player who Cadete had torn apart in international duty 3 years previously when netting a double for Portugal in a 5-0 victory over Scotland. Fergus McCann insisted Farry had acted deliberately when delaying the registration, and a commission would later agree with this. Farry was sacked by the SFA in 1999 over the incident. Whether Farry was simply a job's worth in the wrong or something much more sinister may never be fully known. Cadete would eventually make his debut in a league game for Celtic, coming off the bench against Aberdeen on the 1st of April 1996. Cadete replaced Andreas Thom in the 72nd minute before scoring just 2 minutes later. The reaction from the fans was so loud after the goal that it blew out the transmitter for Radio 5 Live, forcing them off the air for several minutes until it was repaired. As Celtic fanzines pointed out, the Nazis couldn't knock BBC Radio off the air during the World War, but Celtic managed to do it on this night. Cadete would score 5 goals in 6 appearances by the end of the season, but the deliberate delay in allowing him to be registered meant it was too little, too late in terms of Celtic's title hopes. The delay meant that in addition to the Scottish Cup semi-final, Cadete had to watch from the stands in league games where Celtic drew with Motherwell, Falkirk and Kilmarnock. 2 of those games ended 0-0. Celtic simply lacked the cutting edge Cadete would provide. Despite losing just 1 league game all season, Tommy Burns' side would finish 4 points behind Rangers as they simply drew too many games. Cadete would shine for Celtic in his full season at the club. The 96-97 campaign saw Celtic try and stop Rangers matching their record of 9 consecutive league titles, and Tommy Burns' side were well stocked up front. In addition to Andreas Thom and Simon Donnelly, Celtic now had Cadete as well as Dutch international striker Pierre van Hooijdonk and Paulo Di Canio to choose from. The trio were dubbed the Three Amigos by Fergus McCann for reasons involving both on and off the field antics. I have a video on my channel already looking at these three throughout the 96-97 season. It was an embarrassment of riches to choose from for a Scottish side, but Rangers were equally strong in attack with the likes of Brian Laudrup, Ali McCoist and Paul Gascoigne. Unfortunately, despite a great campaign elsewise, Cadete never really turned up in the derby games, which would ultimately decide the fate of the title. However, the one goal Cadete did score against Rangers was yet another controversial chapter in his time at the club. Celtic went to Ibrox on the 2nd of January 1997, 11 points behind in the title race, but with 2 games in hand. A George Albert's free kick gave Rangers the half-time lead, but the game really came to life in the second period. Paulo Di Canio equalised for Celtic just after the hour mark, before disastrous Celtic defending allowed Eric Bo Anderson to put Rangers 2-1 up in the 83rd minute. Just 3 minutes later, Jorge Cadete chested down the ball in the box and fired home an unstoppable equaliser, except it didn't count. Linesman Gordon McBride flagged for something. It clearly wasn't a handball, it clearly wasn't offside, but nevertheless, Cadete's equalising goal was disallowed. McBride had played in a charity match wearing a Rangers strip and was on the Ibrox club's season ticket mailing list, but the SFA determined this was not cause to prevent him from officiating in the game. Just moments later, Rangers would score a third to seal the victory and essentially seal the title. The decision drew the fury of Celtic fans and management and ultimately denied Cadete the opportunity to break the Scottish domestic record of scoring in 9 consecutive league games. Much is made of the disgraceful decision from Gordon McBride, and it's a crucial moment in the game, rightfully so, but in truth, it was far from the moment that cost Celtic the title. Tommy Burns' side that season were amazing up front, but they were equally woeful in defence and lost all 4 league games to Rangers. Cadete won Celtic a penalty in a 2-0 Scottish Cup quarter-final victory over Rangers in March, but the record shows Cadete never scored in an Old Firm game. Even with that, Cadete thrived in the free-flowing attacking side. He finished the campaign as the top goal scorer in the country, scoring 33 goals in 43 appearances. He achieved this entirely from open play as well, as he didn't take penalties or free kicks throughout the season. He was a huge fan favourite, and Celtic Park was regularly filled with the sound of fans singing his name as he put the ball in the netty. But when Tommy Burns was sacked in April and everything fell apart, just like Van Hooijdonk and Di Canio, Cadete too agitated for a move away from the club. Throughout the summer, new Celtic general manager Jock Brown and new head coach Wim Jansen worked to keep Cadete from leaving, but Cadete remained in Portugal, citing mental health issues and a failure to settle in Scotland. Jock Brown would blame someone else on urging Cadete to leave: his girlfriend. Brown claimed Jorge Cadete was an immature, depressive character, totally under the influence of a domineering lady. Fergus McCann would state, "Cadete was a financial basket case and I felt sorry for him. He had 2 wives and wasn't mentally strong. He was a better player than Van Hooijdonk. I'm not surprised by what's happened to any of them," meaning the Three Amigos. "What does surprise me is someone is willing to pay to take trouble off your hands." That someone was La Liga side Celta Vigo, who signed Cadete from Celtic for £3.5 million on the 28th of August 1997. A huge profit for someone who signed for just 400 grand only a year or so earlier, but the fans were still devastated to see Cadete go. In Spain, Cadete once again made an immediate impact, scoring on his debut in a 3-3 draw against Atletico Madrid. Aged 29, Cadete should have been in his prime at this point and hit even greater heights. But it wasn't to be. The Portuguese striker struggled in Spain and finished the campaign with just 7 goals in 30 appearances. After this, Cadete simply wasn't the same player anymore. He struggled both on and off the field with mental and physical health. He made just 11 appearances in his second season in Spain, scoring only 1 goal. In an attempt to revive his career, Cadete then moved back to Portugal, but this time he joined Sporting's bitter rivals Benfica. Despite linking up with former Celtic teammate Pierre van Hooijdonk, Cadete was now a shell of his former self. He barely played and was regularly kept out of the Benfica team by 34-year-old Welsh striker Dean Saunders. In 3 years at the club, Cadete managed just 3 goals in 22 appearances, barely any of them seeing him start the game. During this time, he was loaned out 3 times, twice to fellow Portuguese side Estrela, but before that, he made a return to the UK when he signed on loan for Bradford City as they aimed to avoid relegation in the final stages of the 1999-2000 Premier League season. Manager Paul Jewell admitted he'd not actually seen Cadete play, but knew his reputation. Bradford did stay up, but Cadete can claim little of the credit. In 3 months at Valley Parade, he made 2 starts and 5 sub-appearances, failing to score a single goal. When his Benfica contract expired, Cadete announced his retirement from professional football aged 34 and looked to start a career in media. Not football media, mind you. No, instead Cadete joined the cast of Portuguese Big Brother. He entered into an on-screen romance with a housemate who had been part of a popular girl group that had been dubbed the Portuguese Spice Girls. Almost certainly the whole thing was at least partially a publicity stunt, and attention soon faded away after the show finished. Unemployed and unsure what to do with himself, Cadete came out of retirement. The once prolific striker, who just 5 or 6 years previously would have had countless clubs vying for his signature, was now publicly pleading with Celtic manager Martin O'Neill to give him a trial. He said he regretted ever leaving Celtic and desperately wanted to come home. O'Neill may have signed the Cadete of 1996 in a heartbeat, but the Jorge Cadete of 2003 was cutting a pretty sad figure. He was washed up and lost, and just needed a payday from somewhere. He would make a return to Scottish football, but instead of Celtic, it was Partick Thistle who gave Cadete a contract in January 2004. He would make his debut for Partick against Celtic in a February 2004 league game, though it was a mixed reception as he came off the bench, some fans still upset about the manner of his departure 6.5 years previously. He'd even grown his hair back to resemble the long locks of his Celtic days, but Cadete was visibly older, slower and heavier. It was never going to work. He soon gave up, failing to show up for training and failing to show up in front of goal in any of his 5 Partick Thistle appearances. Cadete would play some lower league football back home in Portugal before retiring for a second and final time around 2007. Where exactly did it all go wrong? Cadete was such an exciting and productive striker in his prime. He managed 5 goals in 33 appearances for Portugal on top of his impressive showings at club level. But after leaving Celtic, everything went downhill so rapidly for him. Off-the-field issues seemed to always have such a major impact on Cadete. At a time when mental health wasn't always at the forefront of people's minds in relation to footballers, it certainly has to be considered what a role this played in his demise. After retirement, despite earning over £2 million throughout his career, Cadete found himself unemployed and back living with his parents. I lost everything I invested. I had a lot of people around me who had no responsibility. The moment you stop playing, things change. Agents forget to call you. You always hear players say, "I've got lots of friends in football." It's a lie. When you finish, nobody wants to know you. In later years, Cadete would return to Parkhead to receive warm receptions from the fans in various charity games. A talented but troubled striker, Celtic got to see the best of Cadete's career. Though there were bad feelings over how he left, it is still the Celtic fans who remember Jorge Cadete most fondly.